I've been an official for 10 years, upright and devoted to public service. Now, I just want to live for myself once. The current Court of Judicial Review Minister, married for 10 years and devoted to his wife, knelt before me with red eyes, begging me to agree to let him marry a coroner with modern memories as an equal wife. He thought I was just a dodder flower kept in his inner quarters, unable to survive without him. But he forgot. My grandfather is the imperial tutor renowned throughout the land. And my father is a second Dan-rank frontier official. And the current emperor calls me Sister and is the true dragon son of heaven, whose life was preserved by my grandfather. When the scumbag brought that extraordinary woman to show off modern poetry before the emperor, His Majesty directly slammed a yellowed case file in his face and sneered. This poem was dug up from an ancient tomb in Kaifeng Prefecture hundreds of years ago, for the crime of deceiving the emperor. What can you use to protect her? Hello everyone, I am Elena. Today I am bringing you an immersive experience of how a clear-headed female lead with max-level background conducts dimensional suppression and grinds the scumbag and transmigrator woman into the ground. The world knows that Court of Judicial Review Minister Chen Yanli cherishes his wife like his own life. In 10 years of marriage, he took no concubines, hoarded no private wealth, and even after rising to high position, would still personally go buy limited Den edition candied fruits that required queuing for me after getting off work, until he went to Jiangnan on a case and brought back a female coroner, insisting on marrying her as an equal wife. He knelt before me, eyes red, and said, "In my life, I passed the imperial exams in my youth and supported mother and you. For 10 years as an official, I was disciplined and dutiful, never once overstepping. But now, I want to live for myself for once." He achieved great merit, yet refused rewards, only asking His Majesty to grant a marriage to elevate that woman's status and cleanse her lowly registry. Watching him humbly beg like that, I finally gave up hope. 10 years ago, he knelt before my grandfather's memorial and made a solemn vow, promising me one life, one world, one partner. 10 years later, I turned and changed into the first Den-rank official robes, entering the palace to return the late emperor's bestowed gold medallion of pardon from death, only to beg for an imperial decree of divorce. Chen Yanli cracked several major cases in succession in Jiangnan and would be returning to the capital soon. And arriving in the capital one step ahead of him were the legendary stories of the female coroner Tang Wan. As a woman, she assisted the Court of Judicial Review in solving cases. Her remarkable skill in examining corpses was astonishing, and the poems that flowed from her mouth were highly praised by the scholars of Jiangnan. The story of how she and Chen Yanli met, understood each other, and appreciated one another had long spread through the tea-houses and taverns of the capital. When the nanny told me this news, I let out an indifferent ridiculous nonsense. In this world, there are plenty of men with 3 wives and 4 concubines, and women in the capital rarely escape worrying over the trivial matters of wives and concubines in the inner quarters. But Chen Yanli was different from others. Even though he had now become a close minister to the emperor with growing imperial favor, I was still the only one in the inner residence of the Chen manor during these 10 years since our marriage. Haven't I experienced enough jealousy and resentment from the women in the capital? If I believed every rumor I heard, Chen Yanli and I would have separated 100 times already. I didn't listen to it or believe it, but at the princess's flower down viewing banquet 2 days later, the way the women looked at me was inexplicably filled with pity and sympathy. Lin Wanwan, the wife of the Vice Minister of Justice, who had always been at odds with me, gloated and mocked me publicly. "I was worried that your pregnancy wasn't going well and that childbirth would be difficult, but now I can rest easy. I heard that Coroner Tang is also well-versed in medicine. I'm sure after she enters the manor, she will take good care of Madam Chen for Lord Chen." With one hand behind her back, she pretended to be profound and began reciting poems that had been circulating around town recently. "One day, I'll ride the long wind and break through waves, raising my clouds and white sails to cross the vast sea. How can I lower my brows and bend my back to serve the powerful, making myself unhappy? How can one not admire and be moved by such a brilliantly talented woman with such a bold spirit?" Her pretentious mockery made the surrounding women cover their mouths with handkerchiefs and laugh. "That is right, Madam Chen. Look on the bright side. What man in this world doesn't take concubines? Lord Chen has remained faithful to his wife alone for 10 years of marriage. That is already rare and shows deep devotion." Madam must not get caught up in such thoughts. Being magnanimous is the bearing befitting a proper wife. These heart-piercing words stabbed into my heart like thorns known after another. The common people said so, and the well-informed official wives also said so. Looking up, sitting in the seat of honor, the eldest princess, who had always been on good terms with me, was also watching me with a worried expression, wanting to speak but hesitating. My originally steadfast heart finally gave rise to a trace of panic. The eldest princess let out a slight sigh and reprimanded the several wives who had spoken out of turn. I pressed my lips tightly together, set down the teacup in my hand, and slowly stood up while supporting my pregnant belly. Then I walked straight to Lin Wanwan and raised my hand, delivering a fierce slap across her face. The crisp sound of the slap echoed throughout the garden. Even if I don't remain as Lady Chen, I am still the Princess Yong'an personally bestowed by His Majesty. It is not your place to mock me with your words. Lin Wanwan fell to the ground, a moment of stunned confusion on her face, only reacting after the surrounding women let out cries of surprise. She suddenly sprang up, eyes red, about to rush at me in desperation. "Gu Mingzhu, how dare you hit me?" I looked down at her from above and calmly reminded her. "My father's transfer order has been issued. He'll soon take up his post as Left Administration Commissioner in Huguang. Before you make a move, you'd better think carefully about your husband's official hat." Her ferocious expression instantly froze on her face, and the surrounding clamor fell deathly silent. When father left the capital in disgrace back then, he was only a 5th Dan rank prefect. In just a few short years, he rose to 2nd Dan rank, Left Administration Commissioner, already the highest Dan-ranking local official. Though grandfather, who held high office, has passed away, His Majesty's support for us students of the GU family is enough to make everyone in the court and beyond wary. However, thou my slap intimidated everyone and preserved the dignity of the Chen family's mistress. It couldn't comfort my own sinking heart. In the carriage on the way back to the residence, I clenched my palms tightly, unable to stop my eyes from reddening. After being treasured like a pearl by Chen Yanli for 10 years, I couldn't believe no matter what that he had a change of heart. Just a few months ago when he left the capital, he still looked back every few steps, urging me again and again to take good care of myself and the child in my womb. But rumors were like fierce winds and raging waves, impossible to contain. I, who was once envied and resented by the noble ladies of the capital as Madame Chen, have now become everyone's pitiful wretch to gossip about over tea. It is as if everyone is waiting for me. The former delicate flower, to be cast aside, then wither and wilt away. I was both angry and aggrieved. After returning to my room, I smashed the jade pillow Chen Yanli usually used, determined to make him give me an explanation when he returned. I waited with gritted teeth until the day Chen Yanli returned to the capital. Early in the morning, the butler came rushing over in a panic to ask for instructions, saying Chen Yanli had ordered him to prepare overnight the lakeside courtyard, which had the best scenery in the residence, for Miss Tang to live in. The blood in my entire body seemed to be drained in an instant. That last bit of hope in my heart scattered all at once, shattered to pieces. The lakeside courtyard was shaded by green trees and blooming with flowers. That was the place we had agreed to save for our eldest daughter in the future. He broke his promise. I sat rigidly in the parlor with my belly protruding. Near noon, Chen Yanli's tall and upright figure lifted the curtain and entered, wearing a crimson official robe, his imposing manner still commanding awe. He walked closer, step by step, and seeing my pale face, suddenly lifted his official robe and heavily knelt down before me. That bad premonition in my heart finally became reality. I heard him say in a deep voice, "Wife, I want to give Tang Wan a status. She comes from a coroner's background. Her family status and appearance are both inferior to yours. She is just a pitiful, extraordinary woman and absolutely won't affect your position as the mistress." Tears suddenly filled my eyes. How many years had it been since I'd seen Chen Yanli so humble? these years, though he has been accommodating to me in everything at home. Outside, he has been the decisive and resolute minister of the Court of Judicial Review, ruthless and impersonal, striking fear into the hearts of corrupt officials. When has he ever humbled himself like this? Nanny Shah beside me looked anxious, afraid I might disturb the pregnancy, but I brushed away her supporting hand, stood up and walked before Chen Yanli, forcing him to look up at me. You return after months away, not asking whether everything at the manor is well, not asking whether the child in my belly is healthy. Yet the moment you open your mouth, your only concern is taking a concubine. Chen Yanli pressed his lips tightly together, his eyes full of guilt and reluctance, yet the words from his mouth were exceptionally cruel. Not taking a concubine, but marrying her as an equal wife. I clenched my fists, nails nearly digging into my flesh, staring fixedly at this man before me who had lowered himself so extremely. What floated through my mind, however, was his spirited appearance at 18, when he topped the imperial examination. That year, grandfather suddenly passed away, and father received an imperial decree transferring him to the remote Lingnan region. No one could read His Majesty's intentions. Ivrion outside was saying the Grand Tutor's manor had fallen out of favour, that the Gu family was in decline. Mother intended for me to marry during the mourning period, so I wouldn't have to observe 3 years of mourning, nor suffer by going to Lingnan. But I took the birth chart and tokens, and went alone to the Chen family to break off the engagement, not wanting to burden him. Chen Yanli didn't agree. With bloodshot eyes, he pleaded with me to give him a little more time. In the days that followed, he barely slept or rested, studying with utmost determination, and finally came out on top in the palace examination. He became the first Zhuangyuan of the great Qing dynasty to achieve the triple first. On the day of his victory parade on horseback, I went too, but in the crowded throng, I accidentally got shoved into the middle of the road. Chen Yanli's face filled with alarm as he dismounted, pushed through the sea of people, and rushed toward me desperately. At that moment, his eyes looking at me were full of urgency and heartache. Yet he observed propriety and dared not overstep even slightly. Only after confirming I was unharmed did he bow to me in a restrained yet solemn manner. He said to me, "Mingzhu, ye have not failed my mission." He offered up all the glory earned from 10 years of arduous study, just so I wouldn't be looked down upon by other noble ladies after grandfather's passing, and also to let father and mother feel at ease in trusting me to him, so they could accept their provincial posts without worry. That day, Chen Yanli was like the most radiant warm light, pulling me out of the darkness of my family's misfortune. But now he is kneeling before me with reddened eyes, asking me to agree to give another woman the status of equal wife. Just this past February, our eldest son, Yuan Zhao, at only 9 years old, topped the county examination and became the pride of the entire capital. And my husband is only 1 step away from entering the cabinet as Prime Minister. My life was supposed to be this perfect. Why does he have to deal me this fatal blow when I'm at my happiest? I hastily wiped away my tears, took a deep breath, and looked seriously at Chen Yanli. Is there some hidden difficulty with the case? Some unavoidable reason? He slowly shook his head, but his gaze gradually became firm. It is a matter of the heart. I smiled bitterly. Whether I agree or not, you'll marry her anyway, won't you? Chen Yanli didn't speak, tacitly agreeing, yet his eyes carried the oppressive air of someone who had long held a position of power and would not accept refusal. I closed my eyes and took a step back. The man before me, after 10 years of tempering in official circles, was no longer as inexperienced as he had been in his youth. He was steady and reserved, always carrying an air of calm strategic confidence in his words and actions. He once said that in this world, the only things that could make him kneel and bow his head were imperial authority. His parents, and me. He knew I was soft and hearted. I also knew he was using this humble posture to force me to yield. I asked chokingly, must it really be this way? Chen Yanli sighed softly, his tone carrying what he thought was deep affection. Wife, you will always be the person I cherish and respect the most. You and I have long been inseparable. I will respect and love you for the rest of my life, putting you first in everything. But Tangwan, He slowly stood up, picked up the cloak from the couch and shook it open, wanting to drape it over my shoulders as he had done before with a tender expression. He said, "Meeting Tangwan, it is as if I've lived anew. Though she is a woman, her ambition matches that of any man. That scalpel in her hands is like a sharp sword that unveils the truth, able to eloquently convey the unfinished words of the deceased, truly admirable. My lady, in my youth, I passed the imperial examinations, and for my mother, for you, I held up the sky. For 10 years as an official, I've been self-gen disciplined and devoted to public service, walking on thin ice, never once overstepping. Now, I just want to live once for my own heart." I turned my head away, dodging his hand reaching out with the cloak, and looked at him coldly. "Since you want to live for yourself, then don't drag me down with you." That night, Yanli went to stay in the study in the front courtyard. Nanny told me that Miss Tang did not enter the residence, but stayed at the best inn in the city. She vividly recounted to me the news the servants had gathered. That young lady does have some sense of propriety. The master went to the inn to fetch her, but didn't even get to see Miss Tang's face. Only got one sentence through the door. "It is against propriety, we cannot meet privately." It seems this matter of taking a second wife is just our master's one-sided enthusiasm, and she may not agree to it after all. I shook my head. Nanny still doesn't understand Chen Yanli. Today, for him to say something like, "I want to give Tang Wan a proper status to me under such great pressure," he must have already reached a mutual understanding with her, perhaps even made promises in private. Someone as shrewd as him, who has weathered the ups and downs of officialdom, never makes decisions with uncertain outcomes. And through this incident of being turned away at the door, Tang Wanqing's reputation for elegant purity and disdain for power and nobility would surely spread once again, winning the favor of scholars throughout the land. I haven't even met her yet, but her reputation in the capital is already soaring like the midday sun, making it difficult for me, the legitimate wife, to move forward. It is hard not to suspect that all of this is Chen Yanli working behind the scenes to build momentum and pave the way for her. I dismissed the servants and lay on the cold bed, eyes open until dawn. My heart ached unbearably. I resented Chen Yanli for being so heartless. I also resented myself for trusting and relying on him too much all these years, as if I'd become a bird he kept in a cage. That knife that hurt me was the trust I personally handed to him. I recalled the year of my coming Jan of Jan age ceremony, when grandfather personally led his attendants to catch a son Jan in Jan law beneath the announcement boards to help me escape the palace selection. At that time, the metropolitan examination had just ended. Grandfather went out for half a day and returned beaming with joy. He told me there was a candidate from a humble family in Jiangnan, full of knowledge and upright in character. Now he had ranked first in the metropolitan exam, with 1 foot already in the Hanlin Academy. His future prospects were immeasurable. Curious, I secretly went to the inn the next day and happened to run into him in the main hall. I heard the innkeeper call him Yang Master Chen and call me Miss Gu. I shyly stepped aside, but his ears turned red and he didn't even know where to put his hands. I led him to a private room, dismissed everyone, and spoke frankly. The Empress Dowager has always intended for me to enter the palace to serve her. Grandfather hastily arranged a marriage for me right after the exam results were posted to avoid the imperial selection. If you marry me, it may very well displease the palace and hinder your official career. You need to think this through carefully. After hearing this, Chen Yanli didn't retreat. Instead, he smiled. Then he stood up, took a step back, and bowed deeply with solemnity. "If Miss is willing to tie the honor and disgrace of the rest of her life to Chen, Yanli hereby makes a promise to heaven and earth. I will never let Miss regret today's choice." I stared blankly at his clear and determined eyes, and somehow nodded my head. The next day, Chen Yanli brought his mother to our door, exchanged betrothal cards with my grandfather, and the marriage was settled, even when grandfather suddenly passed away later, and the Gu family lost its pillar in the court. He still didn't abandon me. In the 10 years of our marriage, he never let me suffer even a little, even later when I accompanied him to that bitter, cold place for his posting. On winter nights, he would always warm the bed for me first, wait until I fell asleep, then tiptoe to his study to handle official business. But it turns out that youthful devotion cannot withstand the erosion of time, and cannot last till our hair turns white. If only I hadn't grown curious about him back then, hadn't rashly run to that inn that afternoon, how wonderful that would have been. But now I'm not only Chen Yanli's wife, but also the mother of 2 children. My husband's heart has changed, but I cannot collapse. I must plan for my children's future. Early the next morning, my eldest son Yuanzhao came to pay his respects. I forced myself to stay alert and accompanied him for the meal as usual, checked his bookcase, and tidied his clothes. He didn't say a word, extremely obedient as I fussed over him. Only before leaving, he suddenly turned around and hugged me tightly. "Mother, Yuanzhao has grown up now. You can rely on Yuanzhao." He looked up at me, his eyes full of maturity and devotion beyond his years. Before grandfather left the capital to take up his post, he told me in private that if one day mother is not treated well in the household and suffers any grievance, I must send word to him. No matter where he is, he will rush back at full speed to support you and take mother away. Mother is first a daughter of the Gu family, and only then a wife of the Chen family. I will never become the shackles that trap mother, nor can father and the younger brothers or sisters in mother's womb. Yuanzhao started his studies at 3 and became sensible very early. From age 6, he stopped calling me mother and instead addressed me as mother in a proper, formal way like a little old den timer. Over these years, he was the only child in the household. He was both the legitimate son and the eldest son, bearing extremely high expectations. Chen Yanli devoted all his effort to raising him strictly. He no longer clung to me like when he was little, nor did he confide in me any more. Instead, he devoted himself to studying hard, hoping to gain his father's approval. I used to think my son had grown up and become closer to Chen Yanli, his authoritative father. I even secretly felt sad and disappointed about it. But the flesh that fell from my body always knows how to protect me at the most critical moments. The tears I'd held back all night finally broke through and fell. I hugged my son and wept bitterly. "Yuanzhao, your father has deceived me to this extent. He actually deceived me to this extent." Yuanzhao's eyes were red. His small hands gently patted my back, just like when I used to coax him to sleep in his childhood. "Mother, Master Mingshu once said that all things are suffering, and one can only save oneself. If mother is willing to let bygones be bygones and forgive father, then from now on in this household, Yuanzhao will be your support. I will never let anyone overstep mother to hurt you. If mother cannot get past this hurdle and feels disgusted, no matter where you go, Yuanzhao will take good care of myself and younger brother and sister, and will never let mother have any worries." I smiled through my tears. How wonderful. The efforts I poured in over these 10 years were not a joke. I raised a son who can stand tall and upright. After Yuanzhao left for school, I hitched up the carriage and went to West Mountain Zen Temple. Grandfather was buried in our ancestral land. I lit an eternal lamp for him at West Mountain Zen Temple in the outskirts of the capital, and often went there to pay my respects. Back then he thought so highly of Chen Yanli. On his deathbed, he forced himself to hold on just to urge me not to delay my marriage due to mourning for him, to marry Chen Yanli as soon as possible, saying this man was worth entrusting my life to. Now this marriage has brought me utter humiliation. For the moment, I haven't thought of a perfect solution, nor have I figured out what manner I should leave in, but she absolutely had to come complain to grandfather's memorial tablet first. I stayed at the temple for half a day, quietly listening to the Buddhist chants. When descending the mountain, I suddenly encountered a large group of officials sealing off the mountain. Apparently this morning's rainstorm had washed out a corpse from the back mountain. People from the Court of Judicial Review came to investigate the case. I sat in the carriage and watched from afar as Chen Yanli, dressed in crimson official robes, dismounted from his tall horse. He took the oiled paper umbrella handed to him by a subordinate, but didn't hold it over himself. Instead, he walked straight to the carriage behind and opened the umbrella. Soon the carriage curtain lifted, and a woman in white emerged from the compartment, extremely naturally placing her hand on Chen Yanli's arm. Then nimbly jumped down from the carriage. The post-Yen rain mud splashed onto the hem of her pristine white robe, but she didn't care at all. She even somewhat playfully stomped her feet a few more times, spattering muddy water that also stained Chen Yanli's usually spotless official robe with mud spots. Chen Yanli showed no displeasure whatsoever. Instead, he indulgently shook his head, raised his arm higher, tilting most of the oiled paper umbrella over her head, while his own shoulder was exposed to the rain. Even though I had convinced myself countless times to let go, seeing this scene, my eyes still uncontrollably grew hot. So this was that Tang Wan whose name resounded throughout Jiangnan, so the tenderness and indulgence in Chen Yanli's bones could also be given to someone else. Biu, the maid by my side, saw this scene and got so angry that her eyes turned red, clenching her fists. How can master disregard propriety like this and hold an umbrella for someone else in public? Last night, Nanny, Xia was worried that mistress might do something foolish, so she knocked on the front courtyard door at the third watch. Master clearly rushed over and waited outside mistress's door until he had to leave for morning court. This servant thought master felt guilty and had a change of heart, but unexpectedly in the blink of an eye, I let out a soft sigh, suppressing the bitterness in my heart. If he truly worried about me, he wouldn't have just stayed outside the room, not daring to come in and face me. He was only seeking peace of mind for himself. Just consider it my own foolish obsession before, Biu. I want to go see what kind of extraordinary abilities this Miss Tang has that are worth him so resolutely abandoning me, his wife of 10 years. I walked back into the temple and happened to run into Abbot Master Mingshu. Master Mingshu was a close friend of my grandfather back in the day. Over these years when I've come to the temple, whenever he has time, he would discuss philosophy and chat with me. When Master Mingshu and I arrived together at the crime scene in the back mountain, Tang Wan had already finished examining the surrounding traces and was beginning the preliminary autopsy. The corpse didn't look pleasant. The officers from the Court of Judicial Review around were fairly composed, but a few young monks from the temple who hadn't seen such things, and the onlooking commoners couldn't hold it in, squatting in the distance and vomiting. I saw Tang Wan's face covered with a homemade mask, showing no fear, even leaning close to examine the corpse without avoiding the filth. While carefully inspecting, she spoke to everyone in a clear and organized manner. The deceased's chest and abdomen show signs of bloating, the face is purple from congestion, there is a small amount of white foam at the mouth and nose, obvious finger marks on the back of the neck, and prominent liver mortis at the wrists. Preliminary assessment is asphyxiation followed by the body being dumped in water. The circle of experienced officers all had serious expressions and absolute conviction on their faces. After examining the surface injuries, Tang Wan began to turn over the corpse's arms. There are obvious friction abrasions on the finger pads of both hands, broken nails on the left index and middle fingers, and defensive cuts on the palm. There must have been intense struggling before death. These marks are sufficient to prove he died from homicide, and the killer had tremendous strength. To further narrow down the killer's characteristics, the body must be transported back to the Court of Judicial Review for in-depth examination. Her eyes held none of the timidity of feudal women, no disgust for filth, no hierarchy, no gender segregation. Every conclusion she made was well-Jan reasoned and evidence-Jan based, professional and confident enough to take responsibility for every word she said. With her competence, she made those arrogant officers who believed women inferior to men bow down to her. In that moment, I seemed to see a woman who had been deeply shackled by propriety for thousands of years, shining brightly in her own domain. Chen Yanli said she was a woman in body yet with the aspirations of a man. And the scholars of Jiangnan said she had valleys and ravines in her chest and the universe in her belly. No wonder the noble woman in the capital, though mocking my husband for taking a concubine, rarely make an issue of Tang Wan's lowly status as a coroner, saying she is unworthy of Chen Yanli. I looked at Chen Yanli again. He stood by Tang Wan's side the whole time, his expression solemn and focused, only passing her the appropriate autopsy tools with perfect coordination when she reached out her hand. The renowned judge who wielded great power was, at this moment, willingly reduced to her capable assistant. Even by you. who was indignant just moments ago, was now stunned into silence, saying nothing. I let out a deep breath, setting aside matters of love and the hatred of having my husband stolen. The professionalism and boldness this woman displayed truly moved me deeply. The current emperor is enlightened and allows women's academies to be established in states and counties. However, our ancestors' rules still tell us that women learn to read and write, study music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, ultimately only to better manage the inner household, support their husbands, and teach their children, and please men. But it turns out women can also stand proudly in this world by virtue of their own skills. I seem to understand a bit now why my husband, who loved me dearly for 10 years, would have a change of heart in just a few short months in Jiangnan. But if Tang Wan's brilliance is worthy of being loved, if Chen Yanli's change of heart is understandable as admiring the strong, then what about the pain I'm going through? The 10 years of youth I spent trapped in that confined world, cooking and taking care of him. I envy Tang Wan for being able to achieve great things outside and shine brilliantly, yet deep down, I'd rather she was like other vulgar concubines, only knowing how to compete for favor and scheme in the inner quarters. At least that way, I could return the hurt they inflicted on me tenfold without any hesitation or guilt. When I looked back at Master Mingshu beside me, the sorrow and confusion on my face were impossible to hide. Master Mingshu looked at me and shook his head with compassion. One attachment, one thought, own fleeting life. Own sorrow, own joy, all in vain. Fingering his prayer beads, he looked toward the rolling clouds in the distance and ultimately advised me with an elder's personal concern. If the Grand Tutor were still here, he would surely hope that the female benefactor could let go of her obsession, come and go as her heart desires, and not trap herself in a cocoon of her own making. A sudden sense of confusion arose in my heart. I had grown accustomed to being a mother, accustomed to life as the mistress of the Chen family. If I truly came and went as my heart desired, breaking away from Chen Yanli, where in this world would be my path home after the autopsy ended? And the scene was cleaned up. Chen Yanli was informed by his subordinates that Master Mingshu and I had been waiting in the back the whole time. His deep gaze immediately looked over, pausing for just a moment before handing what he was holding to his deputy and striding toward us. After greeting Master Tongming, he naturally stepped forward, took the heavy cloak from Bayu's hands, and gently draped it over me. His movements were gentle and tender, just like before, but only I sensitively noticed that his fingertips were deliberately avoiding contact with my shoulders the entire time, not touching them even slightly. Now that his heart belonged to another, he began subconsciously keeping his distance from me, staying faithful to that other person. Just like back when we got engaged, he had etched into his very bones the principles of staying pure and never being alone with other women. But after all these years going in circles, the one he now deliberately distanced himself from and avoided was me. Looking at him, I suddenly felt it was all meaningless, and the love in my heart receded like the tide in that moment. How could one grow old together with someone so heartless, this person? This relationship that existed in name only was no longer worth any scheming tactics to preserve or salvage. I closed my eyes, trying hard to calm my emotions. Then I bid farewell to Master Mingshu, ignored Chen Yanli, turned around and left directly. Chen Yanli's gaze remained fixed on me the whole time, but he didn't immediately chase after me to hold my hand and coax me like he had for the past 10 years. Master Mingshu stroked his white beard, his eyes sharp and unfathomable as he said to him, "Benefactor Chen, don't let greed cloud the mirror of your heart, one wrong thought, and it becomes eternal damnation with no return. Regret will come too late." Chen Yanli merely bowed slightly, not taking these words to heart. He briefly informed Master Mingshu in a flat tone about sealing the mountain to investigate the case, then turned around and walked back toward Tang Wan's direction. Since entering officialdom, every step he took had been carefully considered. He believed he could never make a mistake. He thought that even if this move turned out wrong, with his power and influence, he could bear all the consequences and protect everyone. Bayu supported me, looking back every few steps, desperately hoping that the master would come to his senses and catch up to explain a few words to my mistress. But all we saw was Chen Yanli's back as he returned to Tang Wan's side, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. The usually lively little maid also completely gave up hope and fell silent. A few days later, another serial mystery case in the capital was swiftly solved by the Court of Judicial Review, causing a sensation throughout the court and the public. Chen Yanli seized this opportunity to submit a memorial requesting merit for the coroner Tang Wan, who had made great contributions, and once again petitioned His Majesty in court for an imperial decree of marriage, requesting the position of equal wife. Coroners had always been considered a lowly profession. According to the laws of Great Qing, those of lowly status could not take the imperial examinations, could not become officials, could not purchase land or property, and could not even marry those of good status, with their descendants affected for generations. Chen Yanli's action was not only to request merit for Tang Wan and remove her lowly status, but also to have the emperor personally issue a marriage decree to elevate her standing and cleanse all the stains on her identity. And at this time Tang Wan, due to her genius in solving cases, and those world-shaking poems that had spread far and wide, was highly esteemed by scholars across the land and officials of the 3 judicial offices. Public opinion was boiling over, making it difficult even for His Majesty to directly reject this matter. When the news reached the manor, he was practicing calligraphy, me hand holding the brush perfectly steady. Nanny Shah, however, was so angry she kept stamping her feet in the room. By acting this way, Master is trampling Madam's dignity underfoot. The entire capital is laughing at us. Chen Yanli held the position of Minister of the Court of Judicial Review, in charge of all criminal and prison matters under heaven. The more upright and incorruptible he was, the more powerful people he offended. So much so that over these years I too was often secretly targeted and ostracized by the families of his political enemies. Once today's imperial marriage decree spreads, I, the legitimate wife who has been by his side for 10 years, will surely become the biggest laughingstock in the entire upper capital's aristocratic circles. I put down my brush and, with my 8-10-month pregnant belly, took a walk in the garden supported by Nanny, clearing my thoughts. The Crown Prince is young. Father and Chen Yanli are both ministers His Majesty has secretly prepared to assist in governing the Eastern Palace. His Majesty values balance and loyalty above all. Before issuing the decree, he will surely summon me to the palace first to sound me out. Sure enough, early the next morning, an imperial summons came from the palace. I changed into the heavy and ornate court robes, befitting my rank, and entered the palace by imperial order. Biyu accompanied me in the carriage. She hung her head low, indignant. Such a big matter as entering the palace for an imperial audience, and yet you haven't even sent anyone to inquire about it. You've truly forgotten your old love now that you have a new one. As soon as the words fell, the moving carriage suddenly stopped. Biyu lifted the carriage curtain, and the escort outside asked in a low voice, "Madam, the master is up ahead. Should we go forward and greet him?" I looked in the direction he pointed. In the shabby wonton shop across the street, officials from the Court of Judicial Review sat in groups of 3 or 4 at a table, wolfing down wontons. Chen Yanli and Tang Wan sat alone at one table. The man who always had severe mysophobia and wouldn't touch anything but refined food was now sitting on a greasy bench. He was indulgently allowing the young lady across from him to pick out the scallions she didn't like from her bowl and unceremoniously toss them into his. He must have worked through the night without rest. There were dark circles under his eyes. Yet between his brows was a rare relaxation and doting affection. Not only did he indulge his beloved girl's mischief, but when Tang Wan lowered her head to drink soup, he even naturally and attentively tucked her stray hair behind her ear. I recalled the past 10 years, whenever Chen Yanli personally served food for me, or for Yuanzhao, to observe propriety. He never used chopsticks he had already touched. Though he came from a humble background, in his conduct he had the etiquette of the scholar Dan official class carved into his bones, courteous and proper, very particular about rules. Never would he make such a scandalous and intimate gesture in public places and broad daylight. I never knew whether during these past 10 years of mutual respect, he truly loved me without reservation, or merely treated me as a perfect mistress of the household to be respected. Biyu, deeply afraid I would be upset and disturb the fetus, hurriedly lowered the carriage curtain to block my view. "Master, don't look." While blocking the carriage window, she gritted her teeth and shed tears. The master acting this way is simply bewitched. He will surely regret it in the future. There is no one better or more dignified than you, master. But I smiled with relief and instructed the coachman to continue toward the palace. Silly girl, no need to worry, and even less need to shed tears for someone unworthy. I've already seen through it all. I won't grieve over this, even for a moment. I absolutely will not give him a second chance to hurt me with emotions. Upon entering the weeing hall, His Majesty was wearing bright yellow casual robes, standing with hands clasped behind his back, admiring a painting scroll. After the inner attendant finished announcing and withdrew, he didn't even turn to look. Only when I was about to kneel in formal salutation did he casually wave his hand, exempting me from the li, and gently said, "Come here." I walked to the painting scroll, and a magnificent landscape of overlapping verdant peaks came into view. What was astonishing, however, was not the painting skill but the bold and powerful calligraphy inscribed beside the scroll. For heaven and earth establish the heart for the people, establish their destiny, for the sages of the past, continue their lost teachings, for all generations bring forth great peace. The calligraphy was like iron strokes and silver hooks, vigorous and powerful, penetrating deeply into the wood. It contained a magnificent power and righteousness that shook people to their core. The signature read, Tangwan. Such a grand and far-reaching vision made my whole body tremble. Unable to calm down for a long time, in my stinging eyes, tears involuntarily welled up. I pride myself on being born into a noble family. At 3 years old, I sat on my renowned grandfather's knee, reading and learning principles, having read through countless books, but when it comes to breadth of mind, I feel I'm far from being as open-minded and clear-sighted as this coroner Tang Wan. The emperor turned his head, looking at my shocked expression, and smiled faintly with an unclear meaning. He suddenly asked me, "Mingju, when you refused to enter the palace back then and chose to marry Chen Yanli instead, do you regret it now?" I lowered my head without speaking, my heart filled with mixed emotions. The current holy emperor was the disciple my grandfather valued most and devoted the most effort to before his death. In the late emperor's later years, he doted on his favored consort and youngest son, repeatedly entertaining thoughts of deposing the crown prince and establishing a new heir, causing turmoil in the court. It was my grandfather who remonstrated unto death time and again to dissuade him. At the most critical moment, he even crashed into a pillar, threatening death to preserve the crown prince's position as heir. The Empress Dowager, grateful for my grandfather's life and risking protection, often summoned me to the palace for companionship, treating me as her own. You could say that I and the crown prince at the time, His Majesty now, grew up together as childhood friends. It is just that he was a few years older than me. By the time I came of age, he had already established his empress and selected his consorts, with the inner palace entangled in the power struggles of the court. So back then, grandfather repeatedly declined the Empress Dowager's suggestions for me to enter the palace as a consort, unwilling to let the Gu family get dragged into the inner palace conflicts. Now he asks me condescendingly whether I regret it or not. I do regret being blinded by Chen Yanli's gentle and refined manner at that inn years ago, rashly believing his vows. But I've never regretted refusing to enter the palace. I only wanted a free and peaceful life. Seeing my silence, the emperor showed no annoyance. He turned his gaze back to the scroll, his tone casual, yet carrying an emperor's perceptiveness. I've seen the coroner's autopsy report submitted by the Court of Judicial Review, clearly organized. He certainly has some real skill. When it comes to solving cases with Minister Chen, you two could be called a perfect match, quite compatible. He raised an eyebrow at me, his tone carrying a protective anger. It is just that the husband little Mingzu desperately chose for herself back then. Looking at him now, his character is nothing special. Do you want your brother to take charge for you today and give him a good lesson? This private address of brother instantly made my eyes well up with tears, deeply moved in my heart. After hastily getting engaged and married to the Chen family back then, I felt guilty for defying the imperial decree and failing the Empress Dowager and His Majesty's favor. To avoid suspicion, except for the mandatory palace banquets during festivals, I never took the initiative to enter the palace to pay respects or curry favor. Yet, after all these years, His Majesty still remembers our teacher-student bond and companionship from those days, and is willing to protect me as an elder brother would. Holding back tears, I shook my head and took out from my wide sleeves the pardon medallion that the late emperor had bestowed upon my grandfather, the Gu family's most precious treasure, and handed it over with both hands. This subject's wife wishes to exchange this item for your Majesty's decree of divorce. I beg your Majesty to grant this. The emperor looked at that medallion and slowly withdrew the smile from his lips. The weeing hall fell into a long silence, with only His Majesty's faint sigh remaining. He raised his hand and gently rubbed the top of my head, just as he did when I was wronged in childhood. Teacher's most beloved treasure has ultimately suffered great injustice at the Chen family. My nose stung, and tears that had been suppressed for so long rolled down my cheeks. The emperor tapped my head with a memorial folder in an exasperated manner. How useless! I enfoffed you as Princess Yong'an, and granted you a fief precisely, so you could throw your weight around and walk sideways. Who taught you to swallow your grievances and let others bully you? Your grandfather is a literary leader with disciples all over the world. Your father is a high Dan-ranking provincial official, own step away from being granted a title, becoming Prime Minister, and entering the cabinet. With such solid backing, how much power could you borrow? How could you, for the sake of a man, live like this, so meek and pathetic, swallowing your anger? Unable to contain his anger, he poked my lowered head again. Go wait behind the screen and watch the show. Later, I will personally get justice for you. He turned and walked toward the imperial desk, muttering under his breath. A mere coroner dares to show off in front of me, plagiarizing the words of ancient sages. When I looked over in shock at his words, he waved his hand dismissively, signaling me to hide quickly. I sat down behind the sandalwood screen, drank 2 cups of calming tea, and my mind completely settled. Soon after, Chen Yanli and Tang Wan were summoned for an audience. The emperor had also just finished reviewing a tall stack of memorials. Without giving the 2 people kneeling below any time to react, he directly threw an old memorial from his side heavily onto the ground in front of them, his imperial countenance furious as he sternly demanded, "Look at this memorial submitted by Kaifeng Prefecture. Minister Chen, you've always prided yourself on being fair and impartial. Explain to me why those astounding poems that Coroner Tang recently composed, and these 4 sentences of Hengku, would appear on broken bamboo slips excavated by Kaifeng Prefecture from a literary tomb dating back hundreds of years. What do you call this?" "This is called dimensional reduction strike, absolute domination." The transmigrator girl thought she had the modern script in hand, treating the ancients like fools who haven't seen the world, but ended up meeting a max-level scheming emperor boss. Wone fake memorial psychological warfare directly exposed her true colors. This scene is literally the highlight of the entire story. I am screaming satisfying. What is a top-tier backer? Not only has your back, but can also use their IQ to grind them into the ground. And Chen Yanli, still desperately protecting her truly clown energy. Chen Yanli and Tang Wan, who were kneeling below, both turned pale, shocked and alarmed, hiding behind the screen. I too had a look of disbelief on my face. For a moment, I thought this was a setup His Majesty deliberately arranged to stand up for me. But when I looked through the gap in the screen and saw Tang Wan's face full of guilt and fear, cold sweat pouring down, even unconsciously clutching Chen Yanli's hem, like grasping at a lifeline, looking to him for help. Only then did I suddenly understand that those poems and verses revered as treasures by scholars and literati truly weren't written by Tang Wan herself. She is a complete and utter plagiarist. Instantly felt it was utterly absurd. My admiration and feelings these past days, the repeated self-Jan denial, thinking I wasn't as good as her, all seemed so laughable and ironic. After the initial shock, Chen Yanli, relying on years of composure, immediately regained his calm. He didn't brush away Tang Wan's hand clutching his official robe, but instead kowtowed heavily, pleading with the emperor for leniency. "Your Majesty, please calm your anger. Coroner Tang may have improperly borrowed from poetry and books, but her autopsy skills absolutely cannot be fake. This subject has witnessed it with his own eyes." Her ability to examine corpses and find clues is uniquely her own. She is precisely the exceptional talent our great Qing dynasty's criminal justice system urgently needs to solve cases. Her merits outweigh her flaws. I hope your majesty will see clearly. Tang Wan was also frightened into kowtowing repeatedly and begging for mercy. This servant may have a vain heart, but I truly have talent in investigating cases and can be put to good use. I beg your majesty to forgive this servant's crime of plagiarism. The emperor's expression remained unmoved, coldly watching those below, though his gaze toward Chen Yanli carried an added trace of deep regret and disappointment. He had indeed previously felt that Minister Chen was upright and steady, exceptionally capable, very easy to work with, and showed great promise. But after this incident, he discovered that this person, for the sake of beauty, might not truly be impartial and could even abandon basic moral principles. That memorial from Kaifeng Prefecture that had been thrown to the ground happened to lie open beside the screen. My eyesight is extremely good, and looking up, I could clearly see it was about Nanjili wanting to present tribute of a rare kind of honey fruit. Below was His Majesty's vermilion gem brush imperial rescript. Such useless things that waste resources and harm the people should not be sent again. So it turned out His Majesty really was testing them. But could such a shocking lie that was so easily exposed really go completely unnoticed by someone as shrewd as Chen Yanli, who had spent months with Tang Wan day and night, coming and going together? Could he truly have been unaware that this woman's talent was extraordinary? He probably noticed it long ago, yet still chose to play dumb, and even used his reputation among the literati to promote Tang Wan with those timeless famous verses, using this to fight against convention and force me to submit. Just as the emperor had previously assessed, Chen Yanli is a man with heavy selfish motives. Nothing more than that. At this moment, the emperor pointed the jeweled and encrusted dagger he had been toying with, which could cut through iron like mud, directly at Chen Yanli. The next instant, the dagger flew out with tremendous force, and, with a clang, it grazed Chen Yanli's cheek, tore through his sleeve, and embedded itself heavily in the blue brick in front of him. The imperial authority poured forth. What if I insist on charging her with the crime of deceiving the sovereign? Such shameless acts of stealing fame and fooling all the scholars under heaven are truly despicable. According to the laws of Great Qing, those who deceive the sovereign shall be executed immediately. Chen Yanli knelt upright, motionless, yet cold sweat had soaked through his back. Tang Wan's prostrate body, however, began trembling violently, letting out terrified whimpers. If this were the minister of the Court of Judicial Review, Lord Chen, who always maintained his rationality in the past, under the absolute authority of the emperor, he should have made the correct choice to sacrifice the pawn to save the king. But he turned his head and looked at Tang Wan, who was scared, pale and teary Dan-eyed, seeing the pleading in her eyes. He ultimately fell completely and softened his heart. He straightened up, his voice firm. I am willing to use my head and my official hat to vouch for Coroner Tang. The emperor looked at him. So angry he laughed instead, and lightly clapped his hands, then cruelly asked, "What if I say that I must kill her today, unless you use the Gu family's death and exemption token left by the Grand Tutor to exchange for this coroner's life?" Chen Yanli suddenly raised his head, looking at the high and mighty emperor in shock. I squeezed the cold death gen exemption token in my sleeve. The emperor hadn't accepted it earlier, but now throwing out this condition, he was clearly forcing him to make a final cruel choice between my life and Tang Wan's. The emperor wanted me to see Chen Yanli more thoroughly and clearly, shattering my last bit of rose-dan-coloured filter. My tightly pressed lips suddenly relaxed, revealing a shallow mocking smile in the darkness. When I first learned that Chen Yanli had changed his heart, I felt like my whole world was collapsing. But with each step afterward, I discovered that so many people stood by my side, considering me and protecting me. I was never alone to begin with. I took a deep breath, and when Chen Yanli, after struggling for a long time, said in a hoarse voice, "I am willing to ask my wife to present the token to save someone," I held the token and walked out from behind the screen without hesitation. I want to divorce him face to face, severing these 10 years of the past openly and cleanly. When Chen Yanli saw me walking out from behind the screen with my big belly, His eyes revealed extreme surprise and shock. He had guessed earlier that someone was behind the screen, thinking it was some favored consort from another palace who came to listen in. But he never expected it would be me. After all, married for 10 years, I had been dutiful and proper, never privately entering the palace to interfere with court affairs. Even so, in just an instant, he concealed his Isa and called out to me in a low voice with complicated eyes. "My wife, why are you here?" Tangwan beside him, however, grabbed onto me like a lifeline, excitedly crawling over on her knees and clutching the hem of my skirt. "Madam Chen, you are kind and benevolent. Please save me. I don't want to die." After all, she was still young, accustomed to living in a modern law Xian-based society. No, truly and utterly intimidated by the ancient emperor's power over life and death. She was frightened to tears, in complete disarray. Gone was the carefree composure and proud bearing she had when examining the corpse at the back mountain. She reached out and desperately grabbed my court robe and, in her movements, revealed an extremely faint lotus Jan-shaped birthmark on the inside of her wrist. Seeing that birthmark, me heart sank with a thud. As if struck by lightning, I looked down at her from above. Me voice iced down cold. "So it is actually you." On the night of the Lantern Festival this year, Chen Yanli made excuses about having an important case to handle at the Court of Judicial Review and couldn't take me to Juke Street to see the lanterns. Understanding how hard he worked, I could only sneak out to the streets with my guards and maidservants to join the festivities. But when buying an exquisite white fox mask, I found myself competing with someone else for the last one. That young lady was wearing a concealing veiled hat at the time, and said to me in a sweet and charming voice that this was her first time attending a lantern festival with the man she fancied, making it extraordinarily meaningful. She begged me to do her this favor and let her have the mask for this. She even specially pointed to a tall man not far away, standing in a long queue buying her a sugar figurine. The man was also wearing a white fox mask, with an upright posture, forming a perfect pair with the one in my hand. I didn't suspect anything at the time, only glanced once, and generously let her have the mask, because my own marriage was blissful. I also hoped that a moment of kindness could help bring together lovers in this world, and when she took out silver from her purse to hand to me, I inadvertently noticed the distinctive lotus birthmark on her wrist. Originally it was just an ordinary little episode, and I only felt in a daze as I turned to leave that the back of that man buying the sugar figurine, his build and bearing somewhat resembled my husband Chen Yanli, but at the time I didn't dare associate my always upright husband with this kind of secret rendezvous. Little did I expect that at that very moment, right under my nose, those two were already having a secret affair, meeting under the moonlight. I always thought they met by chance while working on a case in Jiangnan, and their feelings gradually developed through work-related interactions. I thought Chen Yanli's change of heart was an uncontrollable accident, something beyond his control. It turns out that while he was still being lovey-dovey with me and conceiving our second child, he had already been making vows of eternal love with someone else behind my back in the capital. What upright gentleman, what noble talented lady, all lies and bullshit. So filthy, this relationship, this person, rotten to the core from inside out. Furious and anxious, my stomach churned violently, and I couldn't help but turn around and retch. I want a divorce, can't wait another moment, another second. But seeing that I still wouldn't agree to hand over the gold medal, Tangwan thought I was refusing to save them. So she stood up and in her anxiety pushed me hard. The emperor, who had been watching me the whole time, his expression changed drastically as he suddenly stood up and shouted in anger, "Mingju!" Chen Yanli, who was even closer, reached out his hands in panic, trying to steady me. "Madam, be careful." The undisguised concern on his face was even more nauseating than his earlier cruelty. A sharp, cramping pain shot through my belly, a warm flow gushed out between my legs, and amniotic fluid soaked my gorgeous clothes. Yet I still gritted my teeth and used all my strength to push away Chen Yanli's outstretched hands. "Get lost. Don't touch me. All of you get away." Drenched in cold sweat from the pain, I fell to the ground, reached out and desperately clutched the sleeve of the emperor who rushed over, begging, Elder brother, I beg you, protect my child. Never let him bear the surname Chen. In the midst of excruciating pain, I hazily returned to 10 years ago when I gave birth to my eldest son, Yuan Zhao. Back then, Chen Yanli served at the Hanlin Academy with a low rank and meager salary, nothing like the great power he wields now. He would rush home every day after work, daily pressing against my belly to teach the child classics and histories, caring for my daily life even more attentively than the experienced nannies. On the day of difficult labor, he waited outside the room with a pale face, and upon hearing the baby's cry, and that mother and child were safe, his legs actually gave out and he collapsed to the ground. But through the haze, I heard my husband rush into the delivery room, gripping my hand and choking up as he said, "Mingju, me wife has worked so hard, I will never fail you." I felt that no matter how much pain or difficulty, it was all worth it. After that, I always felt I was probably the happiest woman in the world, the one who married the best. But I don't know when it started. That honorable scholar who had eyes only for me in my heart had already rotted to the core. My belly hurt more and more, 100 times worse than when I gave birth to Yuan Zhao last time. This child who came with endless expectations, probably sensing his mother's sorrow and determination, refused to come out. I pushed with all my might, exerted every ounce of strength on the birthing bed in the side hall, until I was utterly exhausted and my vision blurred. Outside the hall, I vaguely heard the Emperor's thunderous fury as he sternly rebuked the director of the Imperial Medical Bureau. "Both the adult and child must be saved today. If anything happens to the princess, you'll bring your heads to me." Then came a flurry of footsteps as the eunuch hurriedly brought Yun Zhao over. The young boy, disregarding those trying to stop him, clutched tightly at the window frame outside the delivery room, his eyes red as he shouted loudly, "Mother, don't be afraid. Yuan Zhao is here. Yuan Zhao will stay outside and keep you company." The Emperor sighed softly, walked over, and patted his thin shoulder with affection. "Good child, rest assured. I will make sure you see your little brother or sister. Your mother has great fortune and a long life ahead." Yuan Zhao's eyes were red-rimmed as he bit his lip and looked up at him. "Your Majesty, ye can do without a little brother or sister, but mother must live. You are the true son of heaven, blessed by the heavens above. I beg you to protect my mother." Lying on the birthing bed, listening to my son's sensible words, tears streamed down my face as I instantly felt an infinite surge of strength. And at this moment outside the palace gates, violent winds raged and torrential rain poured down. Chen Yanli had been stripped of his official hat and knelt in the pouring rain, wearing only thin garments, waiting for his punishment. He lowered his eyes, letting the rain wash over him, making it impossible for others to see the expression in his eyes. His tightly clenched fists, with nails deeply embedded in his palms, drawing blood, revealed some of the extreme panic and turmoil in his heart. Suddenly, the sound of urgent horse hooves came through the curtain of rain. A middle-aged man wearing a straw raincoat galloped to the palace gate and swiftly dismounted. He had already been traveling day and night after receiving a secret letter, unshaven, covered in mud, looking somewhat disheveled. Now, drenched by the rain, he appeared even more traveled and worn and haggard, but his steps didn't stop. With thunderous fury, as he passed Chen Yanli, he mercilessly kicked him hard in the chest. "You wretch! I entrusted my daughter, whom I treasured like a pearl, to you, and this is how you treat her. This marriage was what you begged for back then, kneeling in the snow for an entire night before me and her mother. You promised solemnly before Mingju's grandfather's spirit that it would be one lifetime mown heart. One pair. Your one lifetime turned out to be so terribly short, you heartless bastard. The person who came was none other than my father, son of the Grand Tutor Gua, second rank official of the current dynasty. Upon receiving the news, he abandoned everything and rushed here through the night. He came to take his daughter home." Chen Yanli was kicked and rolled several times in the muddy water, his chest aching with pain. Yet he lay on the ground, allowing the mud and water to cover his entire body, motionless, not daring to resist. He had been arrogantly self-important, thinking he could control everything in the court and the inner residence. He thought he had already given his wife the greatest honor that women under heaven would envy, the position of legitimate wife. He thought that Mingju, having been pampered and raised by the Jiyu family, had a gentle temperament, and even if she suffered some grievances, it wouldn't matter much. In the future, he only needed to coax her a little and she would still love him most. But just now in the hall, when His Majesty mercilessly threw the imperial edict of divorces stamped with the jade seal right in his face, for the first time he truly realized that his wife, that woman who always smiled at him gently, was not a dodder flower that depended on him to survive. A child personally raised and taught by Grand Tutor Gu. Her gentleness like water was merely her upbringing and refinement. The unyielding integrity in her bones, her preference to be shattered jade rather than intact tile. That was her true nature. Chen Yanli's face no longer showed the calm and composure he had when judging cases in the past. He rose in panic, crawling through the mud regardless of everything, reaching my father's side and begging humbly from the dust. Father Jian Jian Law, every mistake is mine. I beg you to plead with His Majesty. Let me enter the palace to see Mingju. She is giving birth to my child. The imperial physician said she has only a slim chance of survival. I cannot be without her. I was wrong. I was truly wrong. I was blinded for a moment, too arrogant. But I swear I never thought of divorcing Mingju. She is my first wife, me beloved. Me very life. I've loved her for a full 10 years. Father, who had always been refined and elegant, attentive to his demeanor, flashed a moment of furious savagery across his face. He wiped the rain from his face, unable to bear it any longer, and suddenly kicked again, ruthlessly striking Chen Yanli's shoulder, kicking him over into the muddy water once more. Since you knew she was enduring the life, jand and death suffering of pregnancy, since you knew she managed the inner household for you for 10 years, why did you still carry on secret affairs with others, flaunting it in public, letting everyone in the world mock her? Your love is too cheap, too disgusting. You're not worthy of speaking her name. Father flicked his sleeve, carrying a body full of cold air, turned around and strode toward the palace gate, never sparing him another glance. Chen Yanli's forehead pressed hard against the cold, muddy ground, filled with remorse, crying out in anguish in the rainstorm, letting out desperate howls. With this kick, Grand Tutor Gu shattered not only the scumbag's hypocrisy, but also that high-end, mighty arrogance of feudal patriarchy. So what if he has stubble and is covered in muddy water? In our eyes, Dad Gu at this moment is absolutely radiantly handsome. His boyfriend power off the charts. Chen Yanli thought he gave his wife the greatest honor. Thought that because his wife was pampered growing up, she would swallow her anger for the sake of the bigger picture, bro. Who the hell gave you that confidence? What goes around comes around. He probably thought he could enjoy the blessings of having multiple women by keeping the gentle, virtuous white moonlight original wife at home to maintain appearances, while outside having a red-sleeved companion, a time-traveling confidante who could perform autopsies as his romantic companion, and the result, or Mingzhu directly told him with her actions, this lady's done playing, flipping the table exactly. True love is protection, is restraint, is not being willing to let her suffer even the slightest grievance or criticism, not you living your peaceful life outside with another woman, while she becomes a laughingstock in the capital's noble lady circle. And then having the audacity to say, I never thought about separation. Love that comes too late is cheaper than grass. When I woke from my deep sleep, several days had already passed. Calming incense burned inside the room. Yet from outside came the sound of lively laughter and conversation. I got out of bed and, supported by Biu, walked to the window. The sunlight was just right, and I saw the Emperor and Yuan Zhao together, happily playing with the newly won Gen-old infant in father's arms. The Emperor was shaking a rattle-drum, making it jingle loudly. He was very fond of this child and suddenly laughed heartily as he suggested, Gu Qing, this child was born in the imperial palace. It is fate. I bestow upon him the name Chengyan. When he grows up, he will surely be like his maternal grandfather, the Grand Tutor, a pillar of the nation. I will personally teach him. The worried expression on father's face finally cleared, and he thanked the Emperor repeatedly. Yuan Zhao, standing to the side, was stretching his neck, trying hard to kiss his chubby little brother. Hearing the Emperor's words, his eyes lit up and he said loudly, Your Majesty, ye also want to become a pillar of the nation together. with my little brother, to protect mother and grandfather. The emperor was so amused by him that he laughed heartily, his dragon heart greatly pleased. The three men, big and small, in the courtyard, all looked over at once. Seeing that I had woken up, they were slightly startled, then all unconsciously showed relieved and warm smiles. Later, Bu told me that, on that day in the Great Hall, Tang Wan, for the crimes of deceiving the emperor and plagiarism, should have originally been put to death. But considering that her autopsy work did indeed benefit the state, the emperor stripped her of all her privileges and reputation, permanently cast her into the lowest class, and confined her to the darkest and dampest morgue of the Court of Judicial Review. She could never again parade through the streets in white robes, and could only work day and night doing the most grueling autopsy labor, receiving punishment for the slightest mistake. I heard that she broke down crying every night, rambling incoherently something like, "Ancient times are too terrifying. There are no human rights at all. I want to go back through time." But no one paid any attention to her crazy ravings anymore. And when my father learned that Chen Yanli had been carrying on an affair with that coroner as early as the first month, deceiving his superiors and concealing the truth, he was so furious that he publicly impeached him in court, denouncing his moral failings. Chen Yanli knelt in the torrential rain until he fell gravely ill with a high fever that wouldn't break. When he awoke, his real power had been stripped away, and he was demoted 3 ranks. Every day he knelt outside the Guyu family's gate in a daze, begging father to let him see me just once, only to be beaten away by the servants with clubs. The emperor asked me how I wanted to deal with these two thoroughly, whether to just exile them directly. Holding my son who had barely survived, me heart was unexpectedly calm, having long since let go of that unbearable past. I recalled Tang Wan's focus during autopsies and her rare talent for solving cases, and also remembered Chen Yanli's former reputation as a upright official among the common people. I said to the emperor, I want Chen Yanli to spend the rest of his life working cases for the people at the lowest level of the Court of Judicial Review, never entering the cabinet, forever watching the glory and wealth that was once within his grasp turn to bubbles. I want Tang Wan to be unable to escape her lowly status for her entire life. Since she attempted to deceive the world through plagiarism, let her use her unparalleled autopsy skills to remain forever in the sunless morgue, giving voice to the deceased and atoning for her crimes through merit. After hearing this, the emperor clapped his hands and laughed heartily. Excellent. What a brilliant move to crush someone's spirit. Let these two toil as laborers for me their entire lives, only to end up with neither fame nor fortune, gaining nothing at all. Mingju, you truly possess the decisive methods of the Grand Tutor from back then. After laughing, the emperor looked at me with a serious expression. Mingju, a woman's loyalty and courage are never inferior to a man's. With your vast knowledge, you shouldn't be trapped within the confines of the inner chambers, wasting away your years. Go see this vast world, strive to reach greater heights, and then use your power to change the circumstances of women throughout the realm. Back then, my teacher risked his life to protect me many times. You need not worry that I would fear the Jiu family's merit overshadowing the throne. Your elder brother will always be your most solid backing. With tears in my eyes, I bowed deeply. He understood me, understood the flame that had never been extinguished in my heart. Ever since that day, I saw Tang Wan performing the autopsy at the back mountain, and saw everyone's admiration and respect for her. I had been thinking about this for thousands of years. Our ancestors have taught us to keep in mind the 3 obediences and 4 virtues, to study the precepts for women, confining women to the inner chambers. A woman's life, obeying her father at home, her husband after marriage, her son after her husband's death, as if she had never truly stood up as an independent person. Since Tang Wan could establish herself with a skill, why couldn't the millions of women throughout the realm do the same? I wanted to completely walk out of the inner chambers, break free from the shackles of feudal propriety, and see just what heights a woman could reach. The last time I saw Chen Yanli was the day we boarded the ship at the dock of the Beijing-Jiangzhou Grand Canal. I was preparing to go south with my father to take up his new post. After settling in, I would use the Gyu family's wealth and the emperor's covert support to establish the Great Qing dynasty's first true academy for women in Jiangnan, teaching them reading, reasoning, and various crafts and skills, giving them the means to stand on their own. Yuan Zhao stayed with his maternal grandfather's family in the capital, preparing for the upcoming prefectural and academy examinations. Chen Yanli somehow got word of this and came chasing after us like a madman on horseback. His hair was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. When he stumbled off his horse, he tripped over debris on the dock and fell heavily into the mud, utterly wretched. He desperately scrambled up, but could only watch helplessly as the Jiu family's grand and magnificent official fleet of ships moved farther and farther away, sailing into the middle of the river. In the morning mist, with no regard whatsoever for his former dignity as Minister of the Court of Judicial Review, he stumbled forward trying to chase into the water, but was held tightly around the waist by his subordinates. All he could do was face the river in despair, shouting my name at the top of his lungs. "Mingju, Mingju, come back. I was wrong, I was really wrong. Please don't leave me." The common people and officials, seeing others off around him, pointed and whispered about him, but he seemed to have lost his mind, seeing nothing, only staring fixedly at the receding sail, tears streaming down his face. I stood on the deck, letting the river wind blow against my sleeves, calmly watching it all, watching that man who once filled my heart with joy completely break down in the mud. My heart could no longer stir up even a ripple, only the relief of a burden lifted. Just in my mind suddenly flashed the scene from our first meeting that day, at the inn. Chen Yanli, in his washed-down-out blue robe, solemnly bowing to me. He said then, "If Miss is willing to tie the honor and disgrace of her latter half of life to me, Chen Yanli hereby makes a promise to heaven and earth. I will never let Miss regret it." His voice then was firm and strong, his promise incredibly earnest, with light in his eyes. Yet in the end it was nothing more than an illusion that couldn't withstand the test of temptation. From now on the world is so vast, traveling south and north, we'll never meet again. Between him and me, our fate ends here, and my vast world has only just begun. After watching Gu Mingju calmly watching her ex-Dan husband lose his mind at the dock, then turning to board the official ship to pursue her career, I was literally in my dorm room wiping tears while standing up to applaud. This is what I call main character energy. Sisters, as a senior about to graduate who is currently in the middle of the chaotic job Jan hunting season. This story not only gave me such satisfaction, but also gave me an extremely profound reality check. Let's dig deep into Mingzu's situation. 10 years of relationship, 10 years of wholehearted devotion and bearing children. In reality, many girls would have been trapped by the I-sunk cost fallacy long ago. Many people would think, I've already invested so much, gave him my youth. As long as I hold on to my position as the legitimate wife and outlast that mistress, I'm still the winner. But not Mingju. Even under the man, eating feudal ethics of ancient times, facing her first love whom she once loved to the bone. When she discovered this candy had not only expired, but was already festering with maggots inside, her choice was to spit it out decisively and completely, and smash the jar holding the candy to smithereens along with it, never looking back. Period. Another thing that deeply shocked me was Mingzu's attitude toward Tang Wan and her final transformation. Honestly, if we look at it from God's perspective, Tang Wan, as a time-dan traveler, armed with hardcore modern forensic knowledge, could have taken the lead female protagonist script and become an ancient hardcore STEM independent woman. When Mingju saw her performing an autopsy in the back mountain, she even set aside their rival identities and genuinely admired her, feeling that she had broken the shackles binding women and was truly shining. But what did Tang Wan do? She had knowledge 1,000 years ahead of her time, yet she chose the lowest path, willingly being a mistress, plagiarizing poems from predecessors like Li Bai and Zhang Zai to build herself a vain persona, turning modern people's wisdom into chips for competing for favor and engaging in female rivalry in the arms of feudal bureaucrats. This is why Mingju's final counterattack was so deadly and extremely satisfying. She didn't pull hair or curse like a shrew, but instead use the method most fitting to their professions to spiritually strip them of what they valued most. Shinyanli, don't you love playing the upright magistrate and want to join the cabinet as Prime Minister? Then you'll stay at the bottom of the court of judicial review working overtime forever, being bossed around by others. Tangwan, don't you know how to examine corpses and want to be an equal wife? Then take your shameful lowly status and work in the dark morgue forever, stripping you of the right to show off in public. This is the ultimate karma, combined with my own experience. A while back, due to the pressure of preparing for grad school entrance exams, plus an extremely draining toxic relationship, I fell into severe internal turmoil. I cried every night, feeling that, if I didn't hold on to this man who had made me promises, didn't follow the conventional path of marriage and children, my life would be ruined. But after reading Mingju's story and looking back at what her emperor brother said to her, Mingju, a woman's loyalty and courage is never inferior to a man's. You shouldn't be trapped in the inner chambers. Go see the world, strive to reach the heights, and then change the situation for women. I instantly felt relieved. Like a sudden enlightenment, girls, our world is really vast. Why should we look for validation in a man who doesn't love you, who is half-Jan-hearted? Why waste our precious youth in a mess that only drains you? Mingju's confidence came from her grand tutor grandfather, her father in a position of high power, and the classics she read since childhood. But for us modern girls, what are our confidence and immunity card? It is our higher education. It is the job offers we worked so hard to get. It is the savings we earned ourselves in our accounts. And even more so, it is the courage to flip the table and start over no matter what terrible people or situations we encounter. Men are not a financial plan, and definitely not an emotional shelter. So, no matter what dilemma you're currently in, whether you've encountered a cheating scumbag, having a rough time at work being manipulated by your boss, or are lost in your studies not knowing where to go, I hope you can be like Gu Mingju and possess that kind of extremely stable inner core strength. When you meet terrible people, pull away decisively. When you encounter Quinji, explore outward. Broaden your perspective, work on your own career, see the bigger world, go establish your women's academy. Since scumbags like to hurt others under the selfish banner of living for myself once, then us girls need to even more fiercely, brilliantly, and without reservation live out the most spectacular version of this life for ourselves. Don't get tangled up with mudfish in a little mud puddle. Our destination is the Sea of Stars, sisters. Wipe away your tears, put on your full makeup, wear your finest battle armor, and tomorrow go slay the whole place again. Love you guys, see you in the next story.